You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
All right, and welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. It is the weekly huddle, bet, set, snap here on a Friday night. I am Derek, and joined, as always, by your co-host, Kevin. Kevin, how are we doing tonight?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Getting ready for week 5. Just pulled off kind of the first trade here in our home league and trying to jockey around here a little
Friday
bit.
Night. Yeah, Matt.
We had the right idea, though, right? Like we were thinking the same thing. So, but yeah, so was able to kind of get that going. Kudos to Justin Fields and DJ Moore owners for Thursday night. Great performances, especially out of Moore. And if you were streaming tight end and started Logan Thomas, you at least feel confident with the result, right? Like he might not finish as a top 5 tight end this week necessarily, but you can be happy with the result that you got, right? He did not hurt your lineup with what transpired on Thursday night. So, and even Sam Howell, I mean, he got there. It was ugly, but he did get there. So, I'm ready to rock and roll, man. Got a good slate of games. We got 4 teams on bye. We're getting some running backs back into the fold. We're down 4 pretty high efficiency running backs here this week, right? I mean, between the Seahawks, the Browns, the Chargers, and the Bucks, we're down some pretty high end running back weight, if you will, this week. But nevertheless, we will get through it. So, any questions, waiver wires, lineups, trades, start sits, all that good stuff, hit us up. We're here for that as we kind of go through some game lines here tonight.
Yeah, and it's it should be a good one. A little fun slate there. I do have to say I was very happy with your shine of the week for tight end. I did take your shine of the week and played him off the waiver wire this week, and Logan Thomas done showed up in a big way last night for fantasy managers. So was very happy about that. Was very happy about the fact that I had so many so many shares of DJ Moore through all my dynasty rosters out there as well. So that was a lot of fun to look up and see.
I was on the unfortunate end of I faced a lot of DJ Moore in dynasty this week, apparently, and I didn't realize it necessarily until you look at the end of Thursday night just to kind of see what you're up against, and you start to get a feel for what roster moves you need to make and who you're going to start and everything. I'm looking at it going, like crap. I have to chase 50 points minimum, depending on your scoring lineup. But I basically have to chase 50 points to start the week. That is not a fun feeling. And I know a lot of people are in it. I'm one of them across multiple leagues. But let me tell you, we're going to find a way. We're going to find a way. We're going to grind through it. And you cure that 50 points with going high upside touchdown type players. And you're just hoping for end zones. That's what you're shooting for. The yardage and receptions are great, but you're shooting for those bonus points, man. You need 6.
Right. That's gonna be tough in some of these, that if you're not if you don't have those upside plays and you've constructed a roster primarily around floor, that might be a little bit of a toughie one to really be looking up on the end of that one. So but yeah, no, it should be a good one. Again, a lot of fun. I'm expecting some really good games over the course of this week and this weekend. So I'm very excited to start talking about some of these matchups here.
They better be good games, because some of these point spreads sucketh. Like, they are not fun.
No, this was some of these weeks you look in and you really start looking through the lines and the totals and the props and all of that. And you're like, oh, this is a really, really, really fun week. And then you get to weeks like this one, and you're like,
yeah, I feel like Vegas is cheating a little bit.
Right. Like I looked at some of these things and probably struggled going through this one more so than most weeks when I look at some of these lines and where I was wanting to go and all of that, which, hey, maybe the fact that, I kind of struggled this week going through that, making my calls and all that, maybe I see a little bit of a turnaround in that against the spread number that has kind of eaten my lunch a little bit here this week. Like, I was looking through that earlier on, and I'm rocking like a whopping 44% against the spread this season over totals and props looking really good to the point where the entire average is up there around like a 54%. But that against the spread number, that has just eaten my lunch all season long. So we're looking to change that in a big way. So I was looking at yours as well. Kudos to you for being at a 58% on all calls throughout the against the spread, over unders and props thus far through the season. I got some making up to do.
Yeah, I've slipped a little, right? I had a great week one, right? 14-1-1 for my over unders in week one. It's been a little bit harder since then, right? I started out really hot, kind of gave me a good jump start, and now I'm holding on here a little bit. So I'm hoping this week gets us dialed in here a little bit and we're able to pull away.
Right. I think my math on that is I'm 11 games back at this point. So that's the you can have yourself a great week. I'm going to try and go I'm trying to think of the math on that real quick, but what the how many games we've got on this thing. What is it? There's
12.
Was there 13 games? 14 games this week, right? 4 teams
14.
on bye?
Yep, 14.
Okay, so 14 total games on this
really
one.
13.
Right, because we're already down Thursday night there, which that was a whole. Hey, at least the overhit. There we go.
Yeah, the overhit. But we both, right, saw that game almost being flopped, right? We saw Washington with as well as they played against Philly, and being a home game, being able to kind of take charge of that one. And holy smokes, Chicago looked every bit as good as they looked the first half against Denver, and they were just able to hold on, right? They put enough together in the second half, and then DJ Moore with another touchdown, and really probably should have had a fourth. I'm still not convinced he stepped out of bounds. Like, no one really challenged it, but I'm not convinced he actually went out of bounds. Right. And so he could have easily had another, 20 yards. He could have been 270 and 4 instead of 250 and 3.
Right.
Holy smokes, man. Like, career type game for him. So kudos.
Absolutely. Tino's time saying, what's up, guys? Not much. Tino's time. Welcome in. Good to see him tuning in. He's got a good channel over there as well. So covers a lot of wrestling stuff. Anybody that's interested around wrestling, Tino's time's got you covered on that one. So if you do have questions, comments, concerns, anything like that, throw them in the chat. Let's go ahead and rock and roll through these things and help you get those lineups set. We're going to be talking fantasy football as well as going through the entire slate of games, making our calls against the spread, making our calls on the totals, and giving you a player prop from each game there as well. Alex, over on the YouTube, start 3 PPR, Kyron Williams, Kamara, Swift, ETN, or Waddle.
Waddle for me is an absolute yes, going up against the Giants, right? Yep. Like, it might only be 3 receptions, but you can see 3 receptions for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like, this Giants defense is just not very good. So I think Waddle is an absolute. I like Swift with the way he's been playing, right? I mean, I think the easiest way to slow down Aaron Donald and some of that pass rush that LA has is to not let him get to your quarterback, right? It's quick releases. So it's a lot of Dallas Goedert, DeAndre Swift, Kenneth Gainwell. Like, I do think all those guys are being extremely relevant, and I think Devonta Smith has a big game. And then Kamara. In PPR leagues, I like Kamara. Right. So start 3 PPR. I do like Alvin Kamara. I think he's going to see a bunch of checkdowns as Derek Carr gets to play with his new toy. We saw it last week. I think we do it again. It's going to be probably the most efficient way for New Orleans to move the ball is just, get him to cheat up, right? You're dumping off to Kamara and then actually acknowledge that Chris Olave exists.
Right. That would have been nice. I like the Kamara if I know what Derek Carr's shoulder is really kind of like, right? Like, and it's one of those that I probably still nursing that shoulder injury there a little bit, but
a wrist flick gets it 10 yards, dude.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking is that's why I kind of like the Kamara move. But if he's, if the shoulder's feeling better and he's actually going to throw the ball, the Kamara stat line looked a lot like, Damian Pierce's rushing line this season. Right, 13 for 33. It was funny. I was looking. There's a lot of stats and that a bunch of Twitter talk about all of that, or X now, I guess is what it's called. But where there's been a lot of players that have gone through and caught 13 balls in a game, and Kamara is the lowest yardage total by anybody in forever, and it's by a long shot. Almost every one of those other players put up at least 80 yards on that. Kamara barely gets scratched out 33. So I do like the Kamara pick. I also don't mind the Kyron Williams, but Kyron Williams a little bit banged up, but he is one of those that there are very few running backs that see 100% of the snap share for their team, and Kyron Williams happens to be like that one guy this year that does that. So I like the fact that he's going to be in there on just about every play, and the opportunity will be there. So
he probably has the safest floor, but he also has the toughest opponent
matchup. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Right. So if you need a floor play, right, to kind of bounce in with that, I think Waddle and Swift are enough to kind of get you there, with as efficient as DeAndre Swift has been and the high upside of Waddle. But Kyron's probably the safest floor over anybody. And not to overlook Travis Etienne, you got yourself a hell of a lineup here, dude. Like this is a tough decision, right? And they're good problems to have, right? That's good. You could make a really good argument for any of these guys out of the 5 to start. So again, if your gut's telling you something different, Alex, go with it. But are we kind of in agreement here, Derek? Waddle, Kamara, and then we split on Swift and Kyron? Is that kind of where we're at?
I think I probably go Waddle, Swift, and I split on Kyron and Kamara.
Okay.
Is probably more where I'm at on that one. But yeah, you could go any direction there, and I think you'll be all right. So especially because if you've got that much running back power on your roster, the rest of the league doesn't have that much unless you're playing in only like an 8-man league or something like that. So
Kyron Williams probably has a better chance of getting in the end zone than Alvin Kamara. Like that's just not Kamara's gig anymore since Drew Brees left town. He's not a touchdown scorer.
Right. I would agree with that. AC asking what's going down with Chase and the Bengals. Yeah, I think you're starting to see the frustrations boil over there in Cincy, right? Like this is a team that was supposed to come in and be Super Bowl contenders, a team that's, took everybody down to the wire in the playoffs last year and just and now they are starting off really in a tough position here. So I think that's what it is, and you're just seeing a lot of frustrations boil over here.
Yeah, I think the best is yet to come, right? I think what we're seeing is a product of your quarterback missing a lot of camp or a lot of the preseason, right, because of the calf injury, and then re-aggravated it. Now he's out saying he's feeling better than what he has in months. We're going to find out on Sunday whether that's coach speak or not. But Jamar Chase will come around. I understand it's frustrating, but I do think he will get there. Like don't be hasty if you have Chase on your lineup and move him for peanuts, right? I think he's absolutely still worth the top pick. It just hadn't been there the first quarter of the season, but it'll come around.
Right. Now, on the flip side of that, if I don't have Chase on my roster, I'm going out and I'm trying to contact the manager that has Chase, and I'm trying to trade him for pennies on the dollar type of thing, and see what I can do and see if I can't put together a RB2 wide receiver to move that over for Jamar Chase and see if I can't get that, and just see what the frustration level is on that.
Yeah, right. I think it's well worth the shot if you have like a Devonta Smith, right?
Right.
Toss out Devonta Smith so that way they don't feel like they're sacrificing too much at wide receiver, and then some form of maybe Alexander Madison type, something of that nature, just to see if that does it. I mean, it's a fair offer, and depending on the owner, the Chase owner, and their level of frustration, they might take that, they might not, but I think that at least gets you in the field of relevance.
Right. And actually, you might even just see if Devonta Smith straight up gets that job done for you, who's sitting at wide receiver, 14 in half point PPR. So, on paper, right, take the names out of it. Like we always say, take the names out of it, and you're trading wide receiver 14 for, wide receiver 29. So there's a lot of that to it, and Devonta Smith still has the name power at that point to make that. So yeah, I like that. Try that one and see what you can do. Make COD great again. Asks full point PPR need 2 running back, 2 wide receiver flex. The running backs are Saquon, Kyron, A-Chain, Hall. The wide receivers Lamb, Waddle, Pittman, Flowers. Brees Hall, automatic yes in there. And then I would roll Saquon, but I wouldn't blame you if you wanted to roll with the Kyron or the A-Chan. Like it's either one of those would be fine. As far as the wide receivers go, I'm going Waddle and I'm going Lamb.
I agree on the wide receivers completely. Waddle and Lamb. I don't mind.
Are you going Brees Hall in the running back?
Yeah, Hall, A-Chain, and Saquon. Right? Okay. Like the only thing.
Oh, he also needs a flex, so that could be it right there.
That's what it is. Yeah, Hall, A-Chain. Yeah. So I think the only potential pivot is if you're nervous about Saquon because you're negative game script, first game back, all that thing. If you're nervous about Saquon, my opinion is you switch over to Pittman because Indianapolis is not going to be able to run the ball very effectively against Tennessee. And we have seen that Anthony Richardson does like Michael Pittman. He will go out of his way to target him, and Tennessee is lighter in the back end. So I think Pittman's game total is like 59.5. If I were betting on that one, I'd tell you take the over. Like I think Pittman gets over 60 yards in this game. Yes, you're going to want him to fall into the end zone, but 7 catches, 87 yards and a touchdown out of your flex, that gets you there, right? That's more than the 12 points, which you kind of want out of your flex to have a good week. So Hall, A-Chain going up against really bad running defenses, absolutely. Lamb, Waddle have to go there, and then Saquon or Pittman, depending on how you feel about the situation. Zay Flowers is just the odd man out in this game. Pittsburgh's pass defense has been less than desirable here this year, so I understand the allure, but play your studs.
All right. And I've actually got a prop on Flowers later on in this one, which I see a very favorable game for him. But the problem is that's going to be a low scoring affair, in my opinion. And if Flowers doesn't get into the end zone, it's going to take away all of the upside on that one, especially in a full PPR where, Flowers having a good stat line is 4 or 5 receptions. Like that's just kind of where the floor is, or actually the ceiling is on that one. Yeah.
5 for 68, maybe 72, something like that.
Yeah. And so even at that point, you're talking maybe 10 to 12 point type of range, which you could roll with that in your flex. The upside isn't there. And I like rolling the upside out of my flex. So, all righty. Guys, again, if you have any thoughts, any comments, questions, throw them out there. We'll rock and roll through them. But you ready to start rocking and rolling through some of these game slates?
Yeah, let's do it.
All righty. Here we go. Week 5. We've got another London game here. Jacksonville, the home or the away. Week 5 game over in London. Jacksonville's the away team this time. Buffalo is the home team here. Buffalo favored by 5.5. The over/under on this one is 48.5. Thoughts on this one?
I'm taking Buffalo to cover this. I'm taking the over. I really tossed back and forth a little bit about this one, whether Jacksonville staying over in London was good for the team or bad because of the distractions, right? Because then it almost turns into a pseudo vacation when you're not at the facility and you're not training. I understand that these guys are professionals and they take their job seriously, but at the same time, you're over there for basically 2 weeks. A bunch of them flew family out. And when mama wants to go do something, typically you give mama what she wants, right? That's the simplest way to put it. And how do you not, right? You have this extra time to kill, and instead of being at home and doing whatever, you're going to go check out Big Ben, and you're going to go check out London Bridge, and you're going to go, see the rooftop bars and kind of the scene, right? It's just human nature. I don't fault these guys for that, but Buffalo seems like they're ready for business, right? stubbed their toe against the Jets, and since then, I mean, they throttled Washington. They beat Miami pretty stinking well, and I think that they're just kind of carrying it on. Like, they are now on a mission. They're getting in sync. There is a really good chance that Von Miller makes his season debut, which I think puts a little bit more pressure on Trevor Lawrence. So I think that this was all business for Buffalo, and they're going to go in and handle business, and I think they kind of put a stomping on Jacksonville here.
So I'm on the other side of that. I do think the fact that they're staying over there, they didn't just make a massive trip and all of that, right? Like, it's kind of that same deal when we see folks travel to Seattle from the East Coast, right? And those teams have to travel all that way west and all of that. They tend not to have as great of a showing there. So I think the fact that Jacksonville stayed over there helps them out on this one. I am going to take Jacksonville. I think that, this is a field goal game type of thing where, Buffalo wins, but Jacksonville still, sneaks inside that 5.5. As far as the over under goes, I'm going to take the under on this one. Right. Like, we talk heavily about what tends to travel well. Well, defense tends to travel well. Run games tend to travel well. Passing games tend not so much to. So that's one of those that I do think that we see this one stay on the under here, just a little bit. But this is going to be a really close one in my opinion here. I think we're going to get something like a 24-21 type of game. So it's like just barely on the under. And we see that with Jacksonville covering. As far as a prop I really like was James Cook to go over 15.5 receiving yards. That one just seemed really, really low.
Yeah, I like that because when I was looking through some things, it already moved up to 17.5. So I really like that 15.5 number. I'm taking Gabe Davis over 39.5 receiving yards. Like, he is healthy this year. He has done a good job complementing Stephon Diggs in this passing game. And, he's getting a couple deep shots every week. 40 yards, that could just be one big play for him. So I like the chances that you can cover it in one shot and call it good.
Yeah, that was a really good one. I like that one as well. All righty, let's go ahead and head on over to Atlanta, where Houston's coming into town. Atlanta favored by 1.5. The over-under on this one, 41.5. Thoughts on this one?
I'm going to take Houston. I like the way that they're playing right now. Now, Atlanta has been no slouch, right? They're 2-2. They're 1-3 against the spread. But Atlanta, with their inability to be dynamic in the passing game, it's only a matter of time before teams just absolutely just continue to or stack the box and make life extremely difficult. And DeMeco Ryans, being a former defensive player, I think he sees that, right? Like, I think he understands what makes his defense tick. And I think they're going to go man coverage, and they're going to slam safeties in the box, and they are going to do everything they can to make Desmond Ridder beat them. And I am not convinced that he is able to do that, or that Atlanta can be dynamic enough with their play calling to back Houston off in this game. So I like Houston to cover. I like the over. I think that we're going to see some points here. I can see Bijan getting loose for one. And the way that Stroud has been able to find Tank Dell and Nico Collins, I like Houston's ability to put some points up in this game and jump out to an early lead.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think that we do see the over on this one here. Like, 41.5 seems really low, especially since we've seen the Houston Texans just come out and play extremely well on the offensive side of the ball and put points up. So I do like the fact that we could see Houston, I could see Houston hanging a 30 burger here in this one and getting close to covering that all by their lonesome. But that being said, so I just said the over. I'm also taking Houston in this thing as well. I think that for all the points that you just made, I think that they come out here and they take care of some business on this guy, and Houston could be sitting 3-2, very early in the season, and something that a lot of people weren't expecting. A lot of people were kind of already writing off this Houston Texan team coming into the season, that they'd be competing for another top 5 draft pick. And they are looking like they're coming out and competing for anything but. And so I think they'll do very well here. Nico Collins, you mentioned him a little bit ago. I do like his prop. He's got a receiving prop of 55.5 receiving yards. I'm going to take the over on that one.
I like it. And I like this for a couple reasons. Number one, We told you on this show CJ Stroud was a better quarterback.
All the way back in March.
Yeah, we were hammering that from the beginning. So I like the fact that he's doing well. I like being right. Imagine that. Who doesn't like being right? But I'm going to gloat about it here for a second. We were right. Now, Desmond Ridder, I'm taking his under 179.5 passing. Again, I just don't feel like they're dynamic enough. I feel like, you're locking down. You're locking down Drake London. Kyle Pitts is forgotten. I mean, Jonnu Smith is basically the receiving tight end in this offense. WTF.
Right.
Like big, bold exclamation points. WTF. Jonnu Smith, a fine receiving tight end in his own right. We saw him do many great things with Tennessee before he went to the barren wasteland of New England and is kind of reemerging. But you have Kyle Stinkin' Pitts. Like, enough said. So Ridder under 179.5.
Yeah, and it's funny, right? Like, I'll pull back the curtain here a little bit because you and I were talking before we went on the show tonight, and in the home league, I've got Deshaun Watson on bye. Also, was dealing with the injury, so even if he wasn't on bye, like, that's a question mark in itself on what I would have done. But regardless, he was on bye, so that leaves it to the point of a super flex deal. And I was asking him, like, I just don't know. I don't know that I can play Desmond Ridder here and feel confident about that. And I didn't play him last week in the matchup with Deshaun Watson being out as well, and pivoted last week to a wide receiver to put in Superflex. I'm going to do that again. That's my confidence level in Desmond Ridder right now. So, I'm not even willing to play Desmond Ridder as a QB2 in my Superflex. I'll put another wide receiver in there. So
yeah, I think that's the right call right now. It's just not like if you are QB starved, right? Super flex leagues, right? If you're in a 12-team super flex league and a lot of teams are keeping 3, if you are starving for help at quarterback, go ahead and slide a waiver claim in for Taylor Heineke. Like, it may not come to fruition, but at the same point, I would not be surprised if we see him start a couple games for Atlanta. And if he does, he's enough of a gunslinger. I think he would at least serve well for fantasy purposes. Atlanta may not get the results they want, but for fantasy purposes, I think Heineke can be relevant enough throwing the ball in that offense that you might see some resurgence out of Kyle Pitts and Drake London.
Very good. All righty, let's go ahead and head to our next matchup here. We got the Carolina Panthers, Detroit Lions. Detroit favored by 10. The over-under on this one, 44. Thoughts on this one?
I love that we locked it in at 10 because this was before Amon-Ra St. Brown went to doubtful, and that allows me to pivot to Carolina. Like, Jameson Williams coming back, yes, but you have a couple dinged-up receivers on the Detroit Lions side. Yes, it's a home game, but this just seems like Dan Campbell's salivating, going, that's okay. We'll run the ball 50 times, and God only knows how many carries David Montgomery is going to get, but I bet it's over 20. Like, I could not find a prop on carries for David Montgomery as I was scrolling through pre-show, but if I could, anything at 19.5 or 20 even and under, I'm taking the over. Like, I feel fully confident in that. This game, I'm also taking the under because of the running, right? I don't think Detroit's going to throw the ball as much. They're going to try and speed up the game, shrink it a little bit, rely on their defense. That's been pretty opportunistic. They've been a pretty feisty bunch here this year. Carolina has been struggling, to move the ball. Miles Sanders hasn't been overly efficient, and the passing game has been blah at best. You see flashes from Adam Thielen. You see flashes maybe from a DJ Chark or why can I not think of the guy's name?
Thielen? Jonathan Mingo?
Mingo, yeah. You see flashes out of Mingo, right? As far as targets go, he's getting some opportunities, but that might be there, but I'm not loving what this reports out to. So Carolina and the under for this game with the banged up wide receiver core for the Lions.
Fair enough. I don't see a world in which we see Carolina be able to put up enough points to keep it close, right? Like, I see this very much being a deal where Detroit's going to come out, put up a couple of quick points and just run away with this thing, literally, to the point where I'm going to take Detroit on this one. I do like your call on the under. I do think that points are going to come at a premium on this thing. Not going to surprise me when we look up and we see this thing be something in the neighborhood of 28-10 type of thing. Like I could see it get that low scoring at that point. So Carolina, they've got some issue. While they've been fairly decent against the pass, they have had major issues trying to stop the run. And so I'm right there with you on the David Montgomery's just going to go ham in this one. But I am going with Detroit and Jared Goff to go under his passing prop of 243.5 passing yards.
I'm going to take DJ Chark over 25.5 receiving yards. Carolina is going to be in catch-up mode. I think that there's a good possibility that he catches a long one, maybe a little bit of a revenge game if you're going to look at it like that from Chark's time there in Detroit. But I think he can get to over 26.
Yeah, and he could take care of that in one single play too.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the kind that I like. All right, let's go ahead and hit up the Tennessee Titans taking on the New England Tennessee Titans taking on the Indianapolis Colts, and line on this one: Tennessee favored by 2.5. The Colts and Tennessee over under 43. Thoughts on this one?
I need to pivot here. I'm taking Indy to cover the game. I like the fact that they're at home. I like the fact that we've seen enough out of Anthony Richardson's arm that we can trust the fact that he can throw the ball. He's able to find the open receiver here, so I do like that. I was initially kind of thinking the under here, but the more I think about it, I do think that Tennessee is going to be able to move the ball on the ground. Leonard is going to be out, so and one of their key middle linebackers, if you will, which kind of is going to open up some holes for him there, I think, in that second level. So I think that helps Derrick Henry. And I'm going to pivot to the over. I think we just managed to get there. Something, I could see 24, 23, something like that as kind of a final score. So I think we touched the over.
Yeah, I'm kind of right there with you. I think that the over is going to get touched on this one. Indianapolis has actually been pretty decent on the offensive side of the ball here, and so I think that they'll do enough to put up the points there. I think Tennessee will keep track on this one. I do like Indy to cover though. Like this one seems like it's going to come down to the wire on this one. But as far as a prop goes, I've got Tajay Spears going under 13.5 receiving yards.
That one's interesting. I'm taking Josh Downs over 35.5, right? We were talking earlier about Michael Pittman. I do like his line as well, but I felt like I was getting a discount on Josh Downs, and him and Anthony Richardson with Downs playing in the slot has worked out well. He's a nice little relief valve for him. Indy doesn't overly utilize the tight ends. Yes, they fell into the end zone last week, but that's not common. So Josh Downs will eat some of that up, over 35.5.
I like it. All righty, let's head over to Miami, where the New York Giants are visiting Miami Dolphins. Miami's favored by 12. The over-under on this one, 47.5. Thoughts on this one?
Miami the over. They could touch this by themselves. Like the way that the Giants have been playing, the way that Miami, yes, they stubbed their toe against Buffalo, but I think that it was a gut check for them, right? So I think they're coming home. They're going to correct some of the things that did not go well for them. And I expect them to make the appropriate adjustments and really just take this game by storm. And by the time it's all said and done with, I don't think it's going to be close.
Fair enough. I was originally thinking that we'd probably see the under on this thing just because I didn't think the Giants would be able to score enough points to push us to the over, but yeah, I think you're right. The Dolphins, we've seen it. They can put up enough points by themselves to cover this thing. The Giants' defense, bad. The Dolphins are 3-1 against the spread this season. So I'm going to take the Dolphins to cover this 12-point spread, which that's a big number to cover in the NFL, especially on a spread. But I'm going to take it that way. So I'm going to go that route. I'm going the over, Miami to cover. One of the props that I really liked, and this one felt like it was the line was set just way too easy, but Daniel Jones to go over 0.5 interceptions. So Daniel Jones have 1+ receptions in this one.
Yeah, I'm taking a Daniel Jones prop as well, and it's under 1.5 passing touchdowns.
Fair enough. Daniel Jones to have a not very good game is what it sounds like.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, imagine that. Question coming in here. Let's go ahead and hit this one up, and then we'll get back to the slate of games here. Braves fan 527 over on Twitch asking CJ Stroud or Trevor Lawrence this week. I'm going Stroud. I'm taking Stroud. Like it's an easy Stroud for me.
I think Stroud's the floor, but Lawrence is the ceiling because I think Jacksonville's going to be chasing points. If that makes enough sense. But Stroud's been playing well enough. He's been getting there, like the game last week. He easily got you there, and they were not chasing points against Pittsburgh. They're in the driver's seat all game long. So I'm good with Stroud. I think he gives you enough upside playing domestically. I think that helps instead of overseas. So I think Stroud's a good play this week against Atlanta.
Yep. And then the next part of that was Christian Kirk or Flowers this week.
I'm going to take Christian Kirk by a hair. And I'm not overly convicted in that. So, Derek, if you feel otherwise, I could probably be made to change my mind, if you will. But I'm going to take Kirk by a hair.
Yeah, talk about two guys that are like legitimately back-to-back in the rankings type of thing. So half-point PPR, kind of the expert consensus out there. Zay Flowers 21, Christian Kirk 22. They're both slotted to get about 6.8 points for projection. The matchups very similar on that one. However, we did just see this Buffalo team hold both Tyreek and Waddle in check, whereas the Steelers, they give up points to everybody on the wide receiver room, right? Like the Steelers are allowing on average, let me get that adjusted here to half point, but the Steelers on average are allowing just over 39 points to a wide receiver core that comes in and plays them. That's about 20% more than the league average there. So there's a lot to be said about the matchup on that one. And with them being ranked so close together, I would lean Flowers at this point and go that route. Now, on the flip side of that, if you do decide that you're going to take the Trevor Lawrence, I'm just going to take the stack and go Christian Kirk at that point, right? Like I would do the stack at that point. But if I'm playing Stroud, I'm going to go Flowers is how I'm going to roll that.
I can co-sign.
Okay. Next question. Domo on YouTube. Hey, guys, got offered Kupp, Henry, and Sutton for Jerome Ford and A.J. Brown. I'm 4-0. Accept it? No. I wouldn't.
I wouldn't either. I wouldn't either. Kupp has a soft tissue injury. We've seen Derrick Henry stub his toe, right? In 11, what was it, 2 weeks ago, right?
Where he had put up 2 points.
Game. And Sutton's a decent flex piece, right? Like he has been coming through and kind of getting his, but with Jerome Ford being the only clear solution in Cleveland and A.J. Brown coming off of monster back-to-back weeks, I think this week's a little bit of a down week for A.J. Brown, but I think it's short-lived. So I would not do that. I would keep Ford and Brown.
Right. And I mean, the fact that it's a 3-for-2 type of deal, Cortland Sutton, I'm still waiting for the slide again to happen this season, right? Like he started off much stronger than I think where he's going to finish on this one. Cause right now he's kind of currently in that wide receiver 2 area. Top end wide receiver 3 territory. And I think he's going to slide to back end 3, top end 4, when the season's all said and done. So, I don't know that you've got more upside with Kupp than you do with AJ Brown, but just because of what we've seen with Kupp being a volume play
there though.
I think we see the Robert Woods. I think we see the Robert Woods Cooper Kupp deal, where even with Cooper, or even with Robert Woods in tow, we saw Cooper Kupp finish. What was that? Wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 4 on the season a couple of years. So, yeah, I would stick with the Jerome Ford and the AJ Brown. Like, I get the temptation on that, and the name power on that has a whole lot to do with it. But the fact that you're 4-0, you've put a roster together, and a roster construction together that you're ready to rock and roll, and you're going to give away two kind of, running back 2 and a wide receiver 1 for Henry. I think probably is a running back 2. Kupp has a wide receiver 1 upside, and Sutton has wide receiver 3 on it. So you get a little more depth, but that's about it. All right. Braves fan saying, thanks guys for the advice. 2-2 in fantasy, need all the advice I can get. Absolutely. Braves fan. You throw out the questions, we'll answer them for you.
Parity's been key this year, right? With all the key stars being, I shouldn't say all, with a lot of big name players being down and some others off to slow starts. There are so many 2-2 teams out there right now that it is common, and it is by far the rule, not the exception, to be 2-2 at this point.
Right. And you can 2-2, all you got to do is get to the playoffs. Get to the playoffs, so you make some noise happen and walk away with a chip. So Peak One Sports Network saying, hey guys, hey Peak One.
What's going on?
They've got a pretty good channel over there as well. Shout out to them for stopping by. Alrighty. Braves fan saying it's Chase and Devonta Smith. So you're talking Kirk or Flowers for the flex? Yeah, I'd probably roll Flowers at that point. I think
Flowers is a flex.
Yeah, I think he's got the higher upside at that point. So
clear path to 12 points.
Yep, exactly. All righty, let's get into our next matchup here. And again, guys, if you have any questions, comments, anything like that, throw them in the chat and we'll hit them up. Week 5 matchup, we got the New Orleans Saints heading to New England to take on the Patriots. This one was a pick'em game when we were going through it. The over-under 39.5. Thoughts on this one?
I'm taking New England only because they're the home team. Like, I think everybody's going to struggle. So this is a game that is not going to be fun to watch, in my opinion. I think that it's going to be kind of a challenge. A lot of it's going to rest on Derek Carr's shoulder, right? Like, Chris Olave can play more of that CeeDee Lamb type role. We saw CeeDee have a really good game against the Patriots last week, but the Patriots are coming off Bill Belichick's worst defeat as a coach. So you got to imagine that practice was not fun. So I think you see a re-energized team here in New England, especially on the defensive side of the ball. It's going to make life really difficult to drive the ball down the field. And I think New England finds a way to squeak it out.
Yeah, I think so as well. Right. Like, this is one of those that I'm going to go with. I think that New England at home and Belichick, they bounce back and they walk away with a W at this one at home. This one here, like, I don't know why the line is set all the way at 39.5. That was one of those that I was looking at it. These are two teams that tend to pride themselves on the defensive side of the ball. The offense is not so great throughout the season, throughout the starting part of the season here. And we've seen it where the New England Patriots average about 13 points per game as far as what they scored. New Orleans averages about 15 points per game on what they score. So on average, these guys are going to put up maybe 38 points. I'm absolutely going with the under on this thing. As far as one of the props that I really liked on this one was Alvin Kamara to go under 14.5 rushing attempts.
Yeah, that's a very odd number, and I completely agree with that. I don't think he gets to 15 there at all, but I do like a Kamara prop, and that is over 28.5 receiving yards. So I think we're going to see a lot of what we saw last week. It's going to be a lot of check down, get the ball out quick, don't let the pass rush get to Derek Carr, let the defense, do its thing, battle a field position, if you will. So Kamara's going to be able to rack it up on the receiving end.
Is Kamara able to get to that 29 receiving yards or more on less than 10 targets, you think?
I think he can, right? The Patriots, now, while I expect them to clean some of this up, they were not the cleanest tackling bunch when they played the Cowboys last week.
No.
So, yes, I expect that to improve a little bit, but they're not without their own issues. So I think Kamara can get there, 6 or 7 grabs, 35 yards.
Fair enough. Question coming in here. We got Terrence on YouTube asking, is Kupp a must start?
I think that's relative.
Yeah.
Now, you drafted him to be almost a must start. Philly's passing defense is not as good as it has been, so I understand wanting to roll him out, but it does kind of depend on what your options are, right? If you had or have Keenan Allen and he's on a bye, if you had Mike Evans, he's on a bye, right? You know, Amari Cooper, like there's DK, like any of these guys, then yeah, Kupp's a must start. So I think it's worth tossing it out there and seeing what he does, especially if you're debating it, roll with it. Like they're not going to activate him. They've played well enough without him that they wouldn't force him in there if they didn't think that he was 100% and ready to go. But once he's in there, Matt Stafford loves him.
Right. And the training videos that we saw and the practice videos we saw of Kupp, in practice this week and some of the footwork drills and some of that stuff, like looked incredibly good. Like it looked really good at practice. But I think you hit the nail right there on the head, right? Like it very much depends on what your other options are. And in most cases, folks drafted Cooper Kupp with a first or second round pick. And that's unless you have magically, stumbled upon all the waiver darlings and late dart throws early into the season, yeah, Cooper Kupp's probably a start for you, especially if you've got some of those other guys on bye this week. So some of that's going to get a little tough, but I think, yes, he is probably a start for you. Kyren Williams, a better flex than Pickens this week. I would start Kyren Williams over Pickens in my flex. What about you?
Yeah, I think I would. I would start Kyren Williams over George Pickens.
Okay. And then Domo, his phone died, and he's saying, did we answer the question about the Kupp, Henry, Sutton for Jerome Ford and A.J. Brown trade? Both of us are on the opinion, no, you don't make the trade. You stick with Jerome Ford and A.J. Brown. Very good. All righty, let's go ahead and hit up our next matchup here. And again, guys, you have any comments, anything like that, throw them in the chat. Let's go ahead and chat those up there. Week 5 matchup, we got the Baltimore Ravens heading over and taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Baltimore favored by 4.5. The over-under on this one, 38. Thoughts on this one?
I'm taking Baltimore. This 4.5 is a weird number. Like, basically, games don't end in 5-point spreads in the NFL. Like, it is an extremely rare number to have a final score with a 5-point differential. So I'm basically saying 6. Right. I mean, this is the weird thing about Vegas cheating, right? What I was kind of talking about at the very beginning of the show, but I'm going to take Baltimore to do it. Pittsburgh just has not looked good. They have not been efficient offensively. Their defense, while the pass rush is there, the back end on the receiving core has been rather lax. I think this is going to be one of those games where Mark Andrews and Zay Flowers are going to be able to get theirs. OBJ is going to play. So it at least gives you another relevant receiver, right? We're going to see what OBJ does, but at least give another option out there, so that way they can't just single in on Zay Flowers. But Baltimore's defense will handle that. I expect the under, kind of this traditional grimy in the trenches type game with two teams who respect each other but don't like each other, and another kind of grinded out old school-ish football game here.
Yeah, and this is one of those that's I'm going to take Pittsburgh just from the standpoint that they came out and just kind of got embarrassed last week. So I think that I'm going to put my put the odds on Tomlin to be able to get these guys ready to play and be able to keep this thing to a field goal. I think that's about where this thing is going to come to fruition at on this one. So I'm taking Pittsburgh to cover, or Pittsburgh with the points there. I do think that the under comes in again, right? Like this is one of those that this is going to be a kind of a grimy game there, but I do like Zay Flowers and a prop on him to go over 45.5 receiving yards. I think he can get that one done.
Right on. I'm going to take Jalen Warren over 18.5 receiving yards. He's been seeing 5 or 6 targets consistently, and I think he can get over that total. All
right. I like it. Real quick before we get into the afternoon slate of games, we got a couple of questions coming in here, so we're going to hit those up. Terrence on YouTube was saying Kupp was his number 1 pick, picked up Achane Kyron Williams, Jerome Ford off of waivers, still rostering Hall, Wilson, Amari Cooper, Najee Harris, George Pickens. So I would absolutely play. I'm assuming the Wilson there is Garrett Wilson. I would absolutely play Garrett Wilson. Cooper on bye. Yeah, it makes it a little. Yeah, you pretty
Kupp
much.
or Pickens. Yeah, you're playing.
Yeah.
You're playing Garrett Wilson. You're playing Cooper Kupp.
Yep. That's the way I would roll that. Looks like he just traded Jordan Addison and Romeo Dobbs to receive T. Higgins. Thoughts on that?
I don't hate it. I don't hate it. Dobbs has been consistent, right? Derek and I have been on Team Dobbs all offseason, saying that he was going to kind of lead in all receiving categories for the Packers this year. But the upside for T. Higgins in an offense that we feel like has shown its worst, and it will do nothing but get better. You're able to make that work. So you sacrifice a little bit of depth for a receiver with higher upside. I don't hate the deal. I understand why we make the move.
Yeah, I can understand why you would make it as well. I'm so much on Team Dobbs. I probably wouldn't have pulled the trigger myself, but I do understand and can appreciate the move to try and capture the upside, because the ceiling for T. Higgins far better than the ceiling for either Jordan Addison or Romeo Dobbs. So I get it. You're shooting for upside, and you're that's the kind of move that you can make to try and put yourself over the top when it comes to trying to win a championship there. So I get it. Alrighty. Week 5 matchup between the Philadelphia Eagles. They're heading over to Los Angeles to take on the Rams. Philly's favored by 4 in this one. Over under is 50. Thoughts on this one?
I'm going to take the Rams to cover. I think this is going to be a 3-point game with Philly heading back west. But I like the over here. I think we can see a lot of points in this game. Both defenses are a little weaker in the back end, so we could see a lot of passing work this game, which is good for Puka. It's good for Kupp. It's good for Devonta Smith. I do have this being a down game for A.J. Brown. He was my pine, right, in our little exercise that we do on Tuesday nights. So we're going to see how that shakes out. But I think Smith and I think there's going to be a Dallas Goedert sign in this week, guys. I got a gut feeling about that. So we'll check in and see how it plays out. But I think Philly ultimately wins the game. So Philly on the money line, at the Rams to cover, and I like the over.
Fair enough. I do think I'm kind of right there in the same opinion there. I do think that we're going to see points come quick, fast, in a hurry. Not going to surprise me to see both of these teams touch 30. So I think that 50 is we're going to see 50 come quick and fast. I do like the Rams to keep this thing within a field goal. So I do think that the Rams find a way to get there with the points. As far as a prop goes that I really like, Matthew Stafford has been on a tear with yardage on this thing. Hasn't necessarily found the end zone with his receivers, but Philadelphia's pass defense has not been very good. They allow lots of points through the air to opposing wide receivers. And I think Matthew Stafford is the beneficiary of that as well. I'm going to take him to go over 270.5 passing yards.
I like that. Big day for Stafford. I'm taking Devonta Smith over 62.5. I think he's the Philly receiver that eats this week.
Fair enough. All righty. Let's go ahead and head on over to Arizona, where the Cincinnati Bengals are heading to the desert to take on the Arizona Cardinals. Since he's favored by 3, the over-under on this one, 44.5. Thoughts on this one?
I like Arizona to cover. They've been a team that has been getting out to some hot starts. They've been able to jump out on some folks and make it difficult. Got that win over the Cowboys, obviously, but made life extremely difficult for the Giants, and the Commanders. And I think we see more of the same. I think since he's been kind of lethargic, if you will, and while we've been saying I think it does come together, they eke it out, right? I think that's the best word I can use for this. They're going to eke out the win. So much like the game before, I'm taking Cincinnati on the money line, but I like Arizona to cover in what I think is going to be a one-score, last drive field goal type game. And I'm going to take the over. I think there's going to be some points in this one.
Fair enough. I'm going to take Cincy on this one. I do think that they find a way to do it. And even at 3 points, if it's a last-second field goal to win by 3, it's a push. I'll take Cincy on that one. I do think that we see the over. I think that this is one of those that we could see points get put up on this one. Prop. This one might surprise some folks out there, but I'm going to take Joe Burrow to go over 245.5 passing yards.
Very good. I'm going to take Michael Wilson over 38.5 receiving yards. Dobbs and him have had a little bit of a connection. Dobbs has been pretty efficient at quarterbacking this team, and we've seen Wilson be a beneficiary of that. We liked him coming out of the draft this year, but understood because of some injury issues why he slipped. But number 2 guy in a game that I think could be back and forth, right? Or for Arizona to jump out, they're going to need the passing game a little bit. So Wilson's going to get to that total. I think he's going to easily get to 45.
I like it. All right, question coming in from Anthony over on the YouTube. Super deep PPR league, only 10 players but 19 roster spots per player. Racy Rice or JMO on the back of the bench.
You're talking Jameson Williams?
That's what I'm going to assume he means by JMO. I'm going to take the potential upside of JMO, right? Like we've seen what the upside of Racy Rice is, and yeah, Racy Rice having a really good game is getting into the end zone, 5 receptions, 60 yards. Like that's about the ceiling on that. We can see JMO get a couple of big long bombs, and if you get those extra bonus points for long passes, I'm probably going to lean that way. But
Is it dynasty or is it redraft, Anthony? If you could, super deep PPR. I think I like JMO in I think I like the upside of JMO in a redraft because you're not stuck with a guy who's only played 6 career games and has 2 career receptions. Like that's it. That being said, his upside is off the charts. So if you have the ability to grab him, I think he's worth a stash in a roster that deep.
And this is one of those that this would be the week to do it, right? If you grab him, stash him, put him on your bench. I'm on Raw, with that situation looking that way, like this could be the game that he blows up a little bit and catches a couple of deep shots, does just enough, and you can potentially try and flip him on that one. Because if he blows up, if he's going to blow up, I'm going to immediately try and flip him for something else out there, and you could work your way up the receiving roster that way.
I like that idea.
Alrighty, let's go ahead and hit up the New York Jets. Coming to Denver, taking on the Denver Broncos. Broncos favored by 2.5. The over/under 43.5. Thoughts on this one?
The Broncos have been favored in every game this season and have yet to cover. I think that trend continues. I'm taking the Jets. I am going to take the over. I think there's going to be some points scored in this game, potentially from both sides. Right? The Broncos have been able to put the points on the board. It's been the defense that's letting them down. So I like the Jets, but I like the over.
Fair enough. I'm going to take the Jets as well. I also like the over on this one. And for everybody out there that was talking about, a couple weeks ago, Zach Wilson's not the answer. He certainly looked really good playing against the Chiefs. And funny enough that this last week was this is a stat that I saw out there that was the first time Patrick Mahomes had been out-dueled in a game. College, professional, first time that he had been out, that an opposing quarterback had more completions, had more yardage than him, had equal amount of touchdowns, less interceptions. By all intents and purposes, you look at the stat line, Zach Wilson outdid Patrick Mahomes when they played last week. Now, does that continue on? Probably. They get the easiest defense in the world to play against here in the Denver Broncos. So, who made Justin Fields look really, really good playing against him. It made Sam Howell looked incredibly good when he played the Broncos earlier in the season. So I think this is another one where we see Zach Wilson show up and have a really good game. I'm taking the Jets. I'm taking the over, and I think the running game also does incredibly well here. Both you and I picked Jets running backs to have as our shine of the week for running backs on the Tuesday show, and I'm gonna stick on that one. I'm gonna call for my shine, Breece Hall, to go over 59.5 rushing yards.
I like that. I'm going to take the big play machine for the Broncos, Marvin Mims, to go over 25.5 receiving yards. His A-dot is off the charts. Russell Wilson likes throwing that deep ball to Marvin Mims. Mims does a great job of tracking it and getting under it, and really kind of helps this Broncos offense take the top off at times. Again, it's not the offense that's the problem. For all intents and purposes, Russell Wilson's playing better than Patrick Mahomes so far this year. Yeah. It just is. Right now, we're through 4 games, right? So, hot take, kind of. But if you're just looking at the statistics and you take the names out of it, right? Take the names out of it and just look at what they're doing statistically. Russell Wilson is playing better, much better than last year, and better than Patrick Mahomes, who's, largely regarded as the top 2 quarterback in this league. So all that being said, Mims over 25.5, but I'm really glad I'm not going to this game on Sunday. I'm glad I get to watch it from the couch.
There you go. Absolutely. All right, let's go ahead and hit up the next matchup here. We've got Kansas City heading over to Minnesota to take on the Vikings. Kansas City favored by 3.5. The over-under on this one, 52.5. Thoughts on this one?
There are only a couple dream matchups that a passing offense could desire to cure the woes of a slow start. The Minnesota Vikings are one of them. So I'm taking Kansas City to cover this. I'm taking the over. I think Kansas City gets right, starts to go ham, and this one's it could potentially be a shootout, right? Like you could see Kirk Cousins find a way to keep it close here a little bit with some of the chinks in the back end that Kansas City has. But Kansas City, ultimately, I think they win this game when it's all said and done with, cover the spread, and I'm taking the over. Lots of points.
Yeah, this is a Kansas City team that has gotten a much slower start than what we've seen in the past with them, right? Like usually we're seeing lines where it's, we're having to try and debate on whether or not they're going to win by double-digit points instead of just, are they able to sneak out a 3.5 point victory against a 1-3 team that, quite frankly, hasn't looked good throughout the season on that one as a complete football team. But I do think Kansas City wins this one. I do think we see the under on this one. As much as Kansas City has had some of its its kind of woes early on in the season from what we're comparatively used to seeing, Minnesota has also had a bunch of woes themselves there. So I do think we find a way to see this thing just come under. I'm not going to surprise me if we look up and we see this thing end up 28-24. Like that's kind of where I think that this one's going to come to play. So just barely on the under. The hook puts me under. One of the receiving props I liked on this one was Justin Jefferson to go under 104.5 receiving yards. That's just a very, very big number to get to. And I think that he gets just under that.
I'm going to take Cam Akers to go over 23.5 yards rushing. I think we're going to continue to see him involved in this offense. Adds a little bit more speed to the backfield than what Alexander Madison has. And we started to see him get involved last week. And I think we can continue to see him involved where this truly becomes a timeshare. So sorry if you're a Madison owner. But I'm going to take Akers to go over 23.5. I just feel like that number for him and what is going to be going on in this game script, you'll see plenty of volume from him.
Agreed. All right, Edward over on YouTube. 2 full PPR. I think that's supposed to be Yo. He's got a full PPR. Choose 3. Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, Chris Olave, Travis Etienne. You got to choose 3 Olave, I think, might be my odd man out just with the Derek Carr shoulder situation.
I'd agree with that. We've seen Buffalo give up yardage, right? They gave up yardage to ETN in week one. They gave up tons of yardage to Breece Hall. Brian Robinson didn't have a terrible game necessarily when Washington played the Bills. So there are chinks in that. So I think ETN will be just fine. Breece against the Broncos is a slam dunk must start. And Garrett Wilson, I think Garrett Wilson is able to get into the end zone, right? If nothing else, I think you get the 6 out of Wilson. Maybe it's only 70 yards, right, when he's traveling away from Patrick Surtain. But I think he can find a way. I think he can find a way to get there and gets into the end zone as well. So I agree. Olave is your odd man out. It's ETN, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, it's more of a case too with Olave and that Derek Carr shoulder injury, and that issue there. I just don't trust the Garrett Wilson. I feel it at least gives me a pretty safe floor. Olave very well might have the higher ceiling of the two of these guys, but it's one of those that you could very well see a Chris Olave stat line this week of 1 reception for 7 yards, or you could see him uncork for 8 receptions, 102 and a touchdown. But those are the variables in between there. Whereas when you were talking about Garrett Wilson, I think you're right. I think this is very much you can see Garrett Wilson easily, 5 grabs, 70 yards, and potentially a touchdown. I feel very confident in saying that kind of thing. And even if he doesn't get the touchdown, his floor, I think, is still 5 grabs for 70 yards.
So, yeah, I think Wilson's guaranteed 8 targets.
Yep. Olave,
I think Olave is guaranteed 5.
Yeah.
It will be better than last week. I do believe that, but it's what Carr's able to do with those attempts.
Right. And even if he gets 5 targets, who knows if those things, while they are counted as targets, if they're actually on target and catchable balls. That's another big issue there.
Correct.
So as much as I wanted to say Olave, I just can't. Can't do it. I'm having to start Olave in the home league. Oh, man. All right. Let's go ahead and get to our next matchup here. We got the Dallas Cowboys heading to the Bay to take on the San Francisco 49ers. San Fran is favored by 4. The over-under on this one, 45. Thoughts on this one?
I've been tossing and turning for this game. I'm excited to watch this game. This is must-see TV. This is back to the 80s and 90s, right, of relevance for these two teams. And yes, Philly will have something to say about that in the NFC, but this very well could decide home field advantage in a playoff game. The Niners have knocked the Cowboys out of the playoffs each of the last couple seasons. Both have been tightly contested games. I think we're going to see a very focused Cowboys team, unlike what we saw 2 weeks ago in their road game against Arizona. And I think San Francisco is going to match that. It'll be a Dallas covering the spread. I think it's a 3-point game. And I'm going to take the under. I think the defenses are going to shine through here. I think you're going to see something 23-20 is kind of what I'm thinking this is going to shake out at.
Yeah, I kept coming back to 24-21 is where I kind of kept coming back to, almost a push on that line, but I'm going to take the under because I do think that this is going to be one of those that we see a very, very tightly contested game to the point where it's a field goal at the end of it. And I'm going to take Dallas to cover that as well. So I've got Dallas in the under right there with you. One of the props I really liked on this one, though, Brandon Ayuk to go over 56.5 receiving yards.
I found the props for this game to be set really well. I had a hard time picking props for this game all the way across. And I settled on Brandon Cooks over 38.5 receiving yards. He's been a little quiet here to start the season, but I do think San Francisco is going to make sure that CeeDee Lamb doesn't go off, and they're going to do what they can to try and contain Tony Pollard. And so that leaves Cooks as the man who needs to step up between him and Jake Ferguson to help Dak Prescott and the Cowboys move the ball enough to remain competitive here. So over 35.5 for Brandon Cooks.
I like it. All right, let's head to the Monday night game here. We got the Green Bay Packers heading out to Vegas to take on the Raiders. The Raiders favored by a point. The over-under 44.5 on this one. What are your thoughts here?
This is one of those situations where Vegas must know something I don't, because I would have told you Green Bay should have been a 2-point favorite on the road.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm taking Green Bay to cover. I'm going to check my notes. I want to take the over, so I'm hoping that's what I put in our notes. I did. Okay. I'm taking the over here. I think we're going to see some points. Green Bay, not so great against the run, so I think that leads towards Josh Jacobs having a very good game here against the Packers. And the Raiders, not very good against the pass. So I think that leads to Josh Dobbs and Christian Watson both having solid games for Green Bay against the Raiders.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a kind of a 24-21 matchup again, right? So we get to just barely on the over here. I do like the Green Bay, right? Like I think Green Bay is going to win this thing outright. So the fact that they get a point on top of that just makes me feel even better. So I'm going to take Green Bay. Going to take the over. One of the props that I saw out there that I really liked on this one, and it felt like it was way too low there, but with Romeo Dobbs to go over 3.5 receptions.
I like that one as well. And you took it before I could get to it. So I pivoted and I'm doing a combined reception total between Romeo Dobbs and Devontae Adams over 15.5 receptions between the two of them.
I like it. And that's an interesting one too, because when you look at the fact that they've got the Dobbs line set at 3.5 and they've got that combined set at 15.5, they've got to have almost, just logic would tell you that Devontae Adams has got to be set at about 12 receptions.
Yeah, which I think that might be a little high, right? Like
right.
I think we're going to see something like 9-7,
yep,
or 10-6, like something like that. Is kind of where I see that out. So individually, I would take, if you broke that out individually, you're right. I would probably take Devontae Adams on the under just slightly, but I like the Dobbs over as well. So I think it marries out.
Yeah, I like that one a lot. Any other thoughts on any of the games, anything like that you want to hit up?
Good slate of games, man. There's a lot of good games on this weekend. Like I'm interested to watch the London game, right? And with it being standalone, I think it gives me a reason to get up and have a cup of coffee and watch some football in the morning before, everybody's kind of hustling and bustling around. But it wraps up with a great Sunday night game, right? And a really good Monday night game too. So the primetime games are spot on this week for your Sunday and Monday slates. So kudos to the NFL for getting those right. And then, some high scoring potential games in the process. Yes, there's a couple stinkers or low scoring games that we think, but I think there's going to be a lot of fantasy points to be had this weekend. So don't give up hope if you got scorched by Fields and DJ Moore on Thursday night.
Yeah, that's one of those that is a tough one to try and haul back from. I was trying to look up and see if we get to see that Toy Story type of game here again on the on Sunday, but I'm not seeing that one out there. So
and that was fun for the kids, right? Yes. Like, yes, the adults, it wasn't for the adults. It was for the kids, right? It was supposed to be entertaining, a way to introduce them to football and kind of have it on their level. Slinky was the chains, right? Like that was fun, right? They had fire under people's feet as they were breaking away. Like the hits were fun. Like it was something creative for the kids. So they're trying, right? They have to expand their fan base. You can't just live in the realm of a stagnant audience. Otherwise you turn into baseball, right? You end up with a bunch of 70-year-old men predominantly who talk about the good old days, right? They have to keep expanding to new audiences. So right, wrong, or indifferent, this Toy Story thing works. And the Taylor Swift coverage works too, right? They are drastically the realm of reach because of those two things exponentially grew the reach that the NFL has, both young to older and across genders and everything else. So don't be get off my lawn guy about that. It's good for football. Like it will mean a better experience for fantasy, a better experience for the youth coming up and being engaged and wanting to watch and participate in it. Enjoy the ride, guys. Like, I get it. If you don't like that, hit mute. If you don't want to listen to them talk about Taylor Swift, hit mute. right? Turn to the radio broadcast and sync it with your TV, because they don't talk about Taylor Swift on the radio. They only talk about her on the telecast. So there's ways around it. Don't be a fuddy-duddy, though. Like, that's not fun for anybody.
Can I be a fuddy-duddy about baseball, though?
You can be fuddy-duddy about baseball.
Okay.
Like, I mean, I happened to see 2 innings of the Rangers and whoever the heck the Rangers were playing in the wild card round. See, this tells you how close I wasn't paying attention. Only 2 innings of baseball I've watched all year long. And I think it's going to be the only 2 innings I do watch all year long. Like, I might catch an inning of the World Series. No.
Fair enough.
It's not where my lifestyle leads, man. Like, I am football. I tune into the NHL because I like watching the Avalanche. And as I get older, I do enjoy it more. And outside of that, I can only have so many vices. I love my family. Like, I love my family. I don't want them to resent the fact that I just sit down and watch it all day.
Fair enough. The thing that I never understood about baseball is how you take 162 games to figure out the 6 teams that are worthy to play for the playoffs there, and they seem to just continually keep expanding that thing. So, yeah, shorten the MLB season down to 54 games. I'll watch some. Get rid of 2/3 of it, and I'll start watching it.
Yeah.
So
make it a sprint, not a marathon.
Right. Well, I mean, realistically, right, when you look at the statistical things there as well, just about every team out there in baseball, and you can look across just about every season, doesn't matter, right? Like, there's some outliers there, but for the most part, every team is going to win 54 games. Every team's going to lose 54 games. The only thing that matters is those other 54 games on the schedule there. So that's what I'm saying. Just make the season 54 games, and let's go that route. And then if we want to have a very expanded playoffs, then let's do it. But it's 162 games to seemingly let 2/3 or a third of the league into the playoffs picture. No thanks.
It'd make for better baseball. Your ace pitchers would throw more, right? Mm-hmm. You're spreading those games out a little bit more, and now they're built in 4 or 5 days rest in between games. A lot of cases.
Right. Where you'd sit there and Not only that, you start doing it where same thing with basketball. 2/3 of the league makes it into the playoffs these days, and you got teams with losing records fighting to take on the number 1 seed. Like, that's just whatever. I'm not excited by it. For those that are, my apologies that I'm speaking ill of your.
You ain't wrong. Expanding it to 10 teams from each conference is hot garbage.
Well, and to play 82 games to get there, so we can only eliminate 1/3 of the things.
Yeah, everybody gets a trophy.
So anyway, moving on. If anybody has any other questions, anything like that for your fantasy teams, for any of the games that we covered, hit us up. Let us know. Put that in the chat here. We'll hit those up. But make sure that you get those in here quick, because we're going to start signing off and calling this a night. Kevin, any final thoughts out there?
Move and shake, man. Move and shake. Now's when you really start jockeying, right? Bye weeks, you kind of get in the grind, battle of attrition, injuries, bye weeks, all the things. So absolutely look at trade offers, right? See what's going to do for your team, but don't make moves just to make moves either. If you started out 4-0 or 3-1, there's a reason you started out 4-0 or 3-1. Like, understand where your strengths are, and play into those, and then also understand where your deficiencies are and try to improve. So hang in there. We got a lot of season left.
Absolutely. Right. And it was maybe a week and a half ago on one of these shows that you can start off 0-4 in the play in your fantasy season, and you can find a way to chip away and keep at it to be able to get into the playoffs. And that's all you got to do. Get into the playoffs and have maximized your roster at that point to be able to rock and roll and make the moves that make sense to be able to win 3 games at the end of the season. That's all you got to do. You got to compete in order to get into the dance, and then it's 3 games in a row, and you'll walk away a champion. So,
and we do have a list of buy low, sell high candidates. It's out on YouTube. Derek got all that stuff pushed out. We talked about it on our Tuesday night show. So it's out there wherever you consume your content. So if you're looking for some ideas, some guys that maybe you need to target, or some guys that you could possibly sell off and acquire more targets if you're thin on that depth piece and need a little bit of strength across multiple positions, we have some content out there for you guys to check it out.
Yeah, and right now it's still in the last like half hour of the Tuesday episode. So you can look at the live on that one, the week 4 into week 5 live from the Tuesday show, and it's on there, and you can go through that. We'll have the individual video on that pushed out here. Here tomorrow is when it's scheduled to roll. So we'll get that thing rock and rolled there. So alrighty, we've got one last question. Two last questions now that other one popped in there. So we'll hit up these couple of questions, and we're going to call it a night here. Start 3, PPR, Garrett Wilson, Christian Watson, Brandon Ayuk, Nico Collins, everybody but Christian Watson in my book.
Yeah, I think the possible pivot is between Watson and Ayuk, but Wilson and Collins to me are the must starts there. If the matchup with Dallas, worries you, I guess would be the right word. Watson does have an easier matchup, but Brandon Ayuk has been Purdy's go-to when he's been healthy. So I do think that you can count on Brandon Ayuk giving you a very strong floor in the Sunday night game.
All righty. Chandler over on YouTube, trade Stroud, Evans, and Connor for Josh Allen and Lockett.
I'm assuming this is Mike Evans.
I would assume that as well. And I get the appeal of Josh Allen there, but I don't know that I'm making the 3-for-2 trade on this one.
I don't know. The problem is with the Bucs being on the bye this week, we haven't gotten. They're not obligated to update on injuries, right? So we know that Mike Evans tweaked his hamstring. We know that he was going in for an MRI. We do not know the results. We do not know the time frame. Fields and Stroud, Pollard, Etienne, Gainwell, Keenan, Evans, Murray, Christian Watson, Terry.
Yeah,
so if you already have Fields, I don't know that I do it, right? Like I think you are going to continue to see Fields improve. I think the first half against Denver, and mostly the first half, but really the whole game that he put together against Washington, I think that they're finding things to build off on in Chicago. So I don't know that you need to chase Josh Allen. However,
the only thing that worries me on this one there is what it does to his depth at running back.
Yeah, because Kelly isn't going to be relevant once.
Yeah, and Eckler, we could very well see him as soon as the bye week's done. So, Kelly's pretty much a no-go for me. Gainwell has fully seeded what we thought was going to be kind of his role to DeAndre Swift in that backfield there.
And at any moment, that feels like it could change, right? Like you could see Rashad Penny all of a sudden emerge, and then it's Penny and Swift for a few weeks, and Gainwell's not playing. Or then you could see it be Penny and Gainwell, and Swift's not. Like that backfield is still interesting. Swift's definitely the hot hand, but I don't know that you make this. I like the upside that we've seen from Fields here the last couple weeks, and I don't know that it means that you need to give up 3 pieces to go. And Stroud's been very competent, right? Not Josh Allen good, but he has been very good as a number 2 quarterback. And I don't think you need to sacrifice the running back depth this early in the season.
Right. And that's
you need Pollard, Etienne, and Connor throughout the year, right? You'd like to have a 3 running back stable, and we as fantasy owners are generally running back deprived. So any running back I'm trading generally needs to have a little bit more weight than what initially is associated with it, because everybody's looking for another back.
Right. Well, and I get it too, because this week that's a really hard deal when you're looking at that with Keenan, Evans, and Amari. All of those guys are on bye this week. So really you're rolling out Christian Watson and Terry McLaurin, which we would have already had to play Terry last night.
Yeah, so you're rolling Pollard, Etienne, and Connor.
Yeah, while Josh Allen is the best player in the deal, and I get that. And normally we're on the side of take the best player in the deal. This is one of those that I think you're going to ultimately kind of come up limping a little bit, because if Pollard misses any time, Etienne misses any time, you're waiver wire fodder in at your RB2, and that's going to be a really tough one to try and roll. So I wouldn't do it, but I get where your thought process is there to try and make that happen. I just wouldn't pull the trigger on it. Any other thoughts there?
No, cosign.
Okay.
I really think we need more information on Evans before we make any rash decisions, because he's played very well for Tampa Bay. Baker's been finding him. So as great as Keenan Allen has been, right, wide receiver 1 or 2, depending on scoring formats, really, Evans has been a top 10 play in his own right. And I want to know more about this hamstring, whether it was just a tweak and the week off came at the perfect time. If it's going to be a little bit more serious, then I think it's time to worry about moving and shuffling here a little bit, but I'm not willing to sacrifice it.
Right. And Chandler saying, thanks, y'all, liked and subbed. Very much appreciate that. Vision asking, start Matthew Stafford or start CJ Stroud? And I'm assuming that is this week.
I'm going to start Stroud. Matthew Stafford, I think, will get you there on the yardage, but he's not getting the ball into the end zone. Yes, you could see that change a little bit now that Kupp is back, but it's kind of with having Stroud right there and what he's been able to do with moving that ball and utilizing Dell and Nico. Yeah, I think, man,
I'm going Stroud.
We like the over, right? We did say that. Mm-hmm. We like the over for that game with them. It's a 50-point over. I'm going to lean Stroud because he's been putting the ball in the end zone. If your gut says start Stafford, I'm not going to fight you on it.
Yeah, I'm kind of right there with you. Personally, I'd probably roll Stroud on that one just because he's been just rolling lately.
What do your rankings say, D?
Right now, Stroud is about 2 positions ahead of Matt Stafford, right? You're talking CJ Stroud QB 13 on the week, Stafford QB 16 on the week. So that's they're kind of one and the same there, right? You're realistically talking about half a point difference in projections when that kind of all comes through. Stroud has the tougher matchup against Atlanta. Atlanta far more stingy about giving up points to the quarterback, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that they just try and chew up so much time on the clock that it takes possessions away from the opposing quarterback. But this is 3 weeks in a row we've seen CJ Stroud put up over 20 points of fantasy for you. Matthew Stafford has yet to touch 20 points on the week. So I'm going to roll with the hot hand. I'm going to ride with the hot hand. I'm going to take CJ Stroud on this one. Matthew Stafford, juicy matchup. But if it's one of those that we see Matthew Stafford again throw for, even call it 320 yards and only gets 1 touchdown, that's probably good for QB 15 on the week, QB 14 on the week type of deal. Whereas I think Stroud's
235 and 2 plus some rushing yards.
Yeah. So I'm going to lean Stroud on that one. They're close, but I'm going to go with Stroud. All right. Josh Allen, Debo, or Stroud, and Keenan was another one he sent. So you get Josh Allen and Debo, or Stroud and Keenan Allen. I still want the Stroud and Keenan Allen at that point. To full disclosure there, Chandler, I am not a believer in the Debo fantasy points this year. I think Brandon Ayuk is going to be the guy that outscores and outproduces that, and very much on the record all the way back in July and August saying that.
Yeah. Cosign. You're just swapping where the points are coming from, right? And what you gain out of Allen, I feel like you lose in consistency in Debo. The ceiling is about the same between Allen and Debo, but the consistency, especially with Mike Williams being on the IR, is with Keenan Allen. They both have the injury history, right, where it can come up and kind of bite them a little bit, and they miss some time. Yeah, I think I set tight on this one. If it was Stroud and Keenan Allen, I might lean that way. Or excuse me, Mike Evans, I might lean that way, only because of the injury. Right. So if you're dying for Josh Allen, and I guess this is the question we didn't ask: how many quarterbacks do you start each week? Like if you're only starting one, no, like there's really no point in this. If you have to start two, the consistency of Allen and the high upside of Fields and the high upside of Allen with his consistency, I do think that might edge it over just a little bit. But if you're only starting one, I still don't see a point in doing this.
Yeah, if I'm only starting one, and that's actually a really good point that you make. If I'm only starting one, there's zero chance that I'm doing this deal, right? Like Fields, I think we're going to see the turnaround. I think we're going to see him be very fantasy relevant going forward. And CJ Stroud, like I just said, is on a tear, 20 plus points last 3 matchups out there. And these are all matchups that we thought were going to not be very good. Like that Pittsburgh matchup, we talked about that last Friday when we were talking about that. CJ Stroud was up to that point incredibly good at getting at doing well with a clean pocket. Last week they got a little bit of pressure on him, not as much as I would have thought. But
it's still clean pocket, man. It was what they did against that pass rush was impressive,
right? And so like these guys are stepping up and doing it for him. So it's a single QB league. Yeah, I'm holding pat on that one. Vision asking, can I see your QB rankings for the week? I have not fully published them yet, Vision. I am an expert consensus ranker on Fantasy Pros, and I will get those published sometime this weekend. And you can check those rankings out on the Fantasy Pros website. So fantasypros.com, and you can search for the good old boys rankings on that one. Antone over on YouTube needs some running back depth. Any buy low candidates? We did spend a whole lot of time on the Tuesday show talking about buy low candidates on that one being Josh Jacobs, Breece Hall, Aaron Jones, Austin Eckler, even on that point. In fact, Kevin just pulled off a trade in our home league, our league of record, so to speak, where he got Breece Hall and traded away Ramondre Stevenson and Cortland Sutton. I felt like that was a pretty good deal and definitely kind of a buy low on that one, because I think, and if you want Breece Hall, this is going to be the last week you're going to be able to get him on a buy low. You're going to have to play a premium going forward. Josh Jacobs, similar thing, right? Like I think we're about to see kind of the uptake on this one. This is one of those, we even said this before the season, it was going to take 3 to 4 weeks before we really see him start to kind of return to form and get back into football shape. So that's another guy that you could go out and target. Aaron Jones, coming off of a bad performance last week. Like this is as low as you're going to be able to get him if you want the Aaron Jones experience there. But there's three running backs.
Pacheco is another guy that you could look at, right? Yes, he just had a pretty good game against the Jets, but generally people find him to be a less desirable piece. So you can typically get him for a little bit cheaper, and he's involved in a high-powered offense, so you know he's going to be on the offensive, right? They're not typically stuck on the sideline as much as teams try and get him there. So I think that's one. Yeah, I think those are kind of the clear-cut options, if you will. Dameon Pierce is a guy who is another one, I guess. The efficiency hasn't been there yet, but I feel like the more CJ Stroud continues to show that he can do this as a passer, defenses are going to back up, start showing them some different things. And that means Dameon Pierce is going to be more valuable than ever to this offense to be able to continue to move the chains. So Dameon Pierce might be another buy low option. So there's definitely some ways to look at that, and some avenues to go if you need some running back depth and what you can do.
Right. And it all depends too on how you approach the deal, right? Like if you're going to go for a buy low guy and you're trying to trade running back for running back, you're going to have to also do a 2-for-1 type of deal in a lot of cases there, right? Like, put in a wide receiver with, some decent upside, decent floor, something like that into it. And you're going to have to kind of look at it that way. But it's those buy lows. Sometimes you gotta work those deals a little bit and massage those deals to make them come to fruition for you.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on that one?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Chandler was saying that he was thinking the same thing on the Josh Allen, Debo, and Stroud deal. Just wanted to hear it from somebody else. So awesome.
Good luck to you, man.
Yep, you can always bounce those off of us. We'll play sounding board for you. JAC traded Hollywood Brown for Stevenson last week. The guy I traded with wanted to trade back with me. As the commissioner asked the league if it was okay if we trade back, and they were cool with it. If it's just up to me, I want to reverse the trade. What should I do? As of now, I don't want too much to do with the Pats offense, but I'm hearing things like Brown may be dealt here soon. Who would y'all prefer between the two going forward? It's a 3/4 PPR. Main running backs are Pollard, Eckler, Rashad White, and main wide receivers are Ridley, St. Brown, Judy, and Thielen. So,
right. So back to the beginning. Brown
Brown for Stevenson. Hollywood Brown for Ramondre Stevenson.
And so now you would be getting Hollywood Brown back.
Mm-hmm.
Over Ramondre Stevenson. With your running back room, the way it's sitting, sorry, Derek, if you can go back down, thank you. Pollard, Eckler, White, I like that as a main stable, with those being the main. I think Brown helps your roster more than Stevenson does, especially with St. Brown not playing this week. If you're not tied to it and everybody's cool with it, then I would flip it back. Like, I just haven't seen enough out of Stevenson. Yes, it hurts this week, right? Yes, you are going to have to figure out what you're doing at your RB2 position besides Tony Pollard in a tough matchup against San Francisco for this week. But Brown is also down. So you can play Ridley, Marquise Brown, and Thielen or Judy, which, I mean, I would lean Judy, but I understand Thielen's kind of had the hot hand there in Carolina, if you want to say that, and roll from there. So if everybody's cool with it and you want to, swap it back, man. I think Brown helps your roster more than Stevenson will, especially because you're getting Eckler and Rashad White back for week 6 and going forward. So you're always going to have those two to plug in.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I'd take the Hollywood Brown side of that as well. Yeah, you're pretty well set at running back there, and the wide receivers are going to, because
Ridley's been underwhelming outside of a game,
but he's a buy low candidate for us as well,
mm-hmm.
right? Like, and he's a guy that we could see pop, and the talent is certainly there.
No, absolutely. I think the best is still to come for Judy. Thielen's kind of a sell high candidate, honestly.
Yep.
Like, that is a potential option if you still want another piece at running back. You know, if you can move Thielen for trying to think who I'd move Thielen for, honestly.
Here's a crazy thought for you. What if, and I could be a little out in left field here, but what if you tried to package Hollywood Brown and Thielen with the Josh Jacobs manager? Seeing if you rolled that way. Do you think it's a little bit too much of an overpay, or
if they need help at receiver, I think it would fit for them. If they don't need help at receiver,
it's just kind of one of those things. Yeah,
I'd kind of be looking for something else. But I think there's some other options. But regardless of, you're good to change it back. It was good that you got everyone's buy-in. If no one cared and you want to, and if you agree that you want to swap them back, swap them back.
Right. Actually, that's the deal. Try and there you go. Try and get Thielen and approach the Breece Hall manager and see if you can't make a deal there with Thielen and a piece. Maybe a little bit of a tougher sell, but
you could do. I'd toss out Thielen and Rashad White.
Yeah, there you go. That'd be a big upgrade, and that would fully solidify your running back room rest of the season. Vision saying that they subbed and liked. Appreciate that very much. Anton, do you think Barkley will play this week? I think it's leaning towards yes, that he suits up and plays. Again, one of those that if I've got other options, I'll probably pivot on that one just because it is the Monday night game. If I have Burita out there, sure, I'll entertain that one. But the problem is that by the time you figure out whether or not he's really going to play, you're going to be pivoting options are darn near nothing.
I think he plays, but I'm weary of it for another option. If this game gets out of control, right, like the Seattle game last week, like the Dallas game in week 1, if this game gets out of hand, the Giants have no reason to play Barkley, right? He's just coming back. It's going to be the middle of the day down in Miami where it's going to be hot and muggy and everything else. Let Matt Breida do his thing in, the back half of the third and fourth quarter, and all those touches that you thought were going to go to Barkley aren't going to be there. So yes, I think he plays, but the matchup's terrible. And with how I see the game script going, Barkley's going to underperform to your expectations.
Yes. Ty, what is up, fellas? Not much. We are just wrapping up here, answering any last questions folks got for the fantasy teams before we call it a night here. JAC saying, I have an offer sitting in my request. He's offering Mostert and Sutton for Thielen and Rashad White's hard pass. Straight up hard pass.
So Rashad White being the only guy in Tampa, as opposed to Raheem Mostert being one of 2 and soon one of 3 running backs in Miami. I'm not doing that. Sutton might be a little bit more of a consistency upgrade over Thielen, but I think you take the downgrade at running back and it's not worth it.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that, cosign. So, all righty. Well, we do appreciate everybody tuning in and all of the questions in the chat. Love going through these and talking it out and answering questions, all of that good stuff. That is going to do it for us tonight. We'll be back on Tuesday at the normal time, 11 p.m. Eastern here. Ty has one question. I'm just waiting for it to populate here, and then we'll get that one up. So Ty, 10-person PPR, Fields, Pollard, Jacobs, Diggs. Are you sure this is a 10-person league? Like, you got a stacked roster here. Anyway, Fields, Pollard, Jacobs, Diggs, A.J. Brown, Andrews, Aaron Jones. The bench has Waddle, JT, Sanders, Dobbs, Charbonnet, QJ. There you go. Roshan, Spears, Elijah, Spears, and Stroud. What moves should I make? Your biggest challenge is going to be making sure that you insert the right guy into your roster.
Yeah.
I mean, just kind of going through that, I'm assuming it's a single QB league. Fields has come on. I think you'll be good rest of the season with that. Pollard and Jacobs, I think you're good rest of the season with those.
And
Diggs and AJ Brown.
Right? I mean, having JT there and Aaron Jones, it's a hell of a running back room. Holy shit.
Yeah. And it's one of those, and standard,
I think you're good.
I think
your biggest decision this week is Aaron Jones over Jalen Waddle.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where your decision is this week.
So yeah, it's 1 flex, 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 1 QB. Yeah, you're pretty. He's made 6 trades already.
Good Lord, good for you, man.
I was gonna say there's no way that you put together that roster outside of a dynasty type of deal without making a ton of trades. And Ty, you've done incredibly well for yourself on making those trades and coming out what I would assume to be ahead on each one of those deals. So I don't think you need to make any other moves. This is one of those that you just kind of sit back and you manage your roster and you just make the smart lineup decisions week in, week out. And this is championship caliber here.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I would lean Waddle over Aaron Jones this week, but I
would do that too.
I am almost, what's the right way to put this? I am dangerously forcing Jalen Waddle because I know he's going to pop and I refuse to miss it.
That's fair. Actually, here's an interesting one. Would you give up JT and Dobbs for, I'm assuming that's Keenan Allen there. The Keenan Allen manager needs a running back bad. I I wouldn't be opposed to making that move, but I'm not going to make the move with JT. Right? Like I'd probably throw out Miles Sanders if they're that running back starved. I'd throw out Miles Sanders and Miles Sanders and Romeo Doubs. You could go Miles Sanders and even the Roshan or Tajay Spears type of thing and try that too if they're that running back needy. Sometimes those 2-for-1 on running backs that are never going to see the day of light on your roster here.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Like, I don't think JT needs to be part of it.
Yeah.
Although the anticipation of Jonathan Taylor might be the highest his ceiling gets all year, right? Like that's what we're trying to debate as fantasy owners who have him on our roster. Like, okay, he's off the pup list. Like, is this anticipation almost like it's almost like going into a dynasty draft, right? Where these picks all of a sudden amplify in price by 10 times.
Right. But yeah, if I'm giving up JT, I would do like that's one of those. If I'm giving up JT, like it's not going to be that I'm including another player in that deal, especially for a team that's running back starved.
Yeah,
like I'm playing that one. But would you do it with Aaron Jones? Doesn't want Sanders unless he gets Waddle too, and I'm not doing that. Obviously, yeah. No, I wouldn't put the Waddle in there. So would you do it with Aaron Jones and a piece?
Yeah, I'd do it. Jones and Dobbs. Give them both the Packers for the clear number one and a high profile passing offense that Kellen Moore is running right now, and get Keenan Allen. I'd give that up with what you have on your roster.
Yeah, I agree.
I'd agree. I'm not giving up Waddle.
Okay, I like it. So Ty, you've done very well for yourself. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. So we're just going to say, hey guys, help me pick 3 running backs to start this week, considering all injury factors: Barkley, Hall, Kamara, JT. Brees Hall, automatic start. Kevin's really high on Kamara this week.
I don't know about really high. I'm just high on his receiving yards.
Fair enough. Fair enough. The Barkley train worries me, right? He's coming off of...
Barkley and JT both worry me.
They do. I feel like the Colts are going to be in that game a lot more than the Giants are going to be in that game this week.
I'm going Hall, Kamara, and Barkley. Because that's how much I don't think of JT.
I get that.
We don't know if he's going to be on a snap count. We don't know. Like they say he's in shape, but he's not in game shape, right? So he's already going to be giving more to Zach Moss now than what he would be here in a couple weeks. In my opinion, the Titans' running defense is
stout.
Is very stout.
All right,
Barkley's at least going to get you the receptions, right? You could see 5 catches out of Barkley and get you some extra yardage there and points in PPR leagues. So I would lean Barkley, Hall, Kamara.
Okay. All right. I'll co-sign with you. Sober Money on YouTube asking, Dynasty PPR Superflex, would you trade Amon-Ra and Kyler for Anthony Richardson and Addison?
Ooh.
I'd rather have, on the wide receiver side, I'd rather have the St. Brown side. What Kyler's future at this point is kind of concerning. So
I think I do this.
Yeah.
Who are your other quarterbacks? So yes, you have Kyler, but what other quarterbacks are you rocking on this roster?
Yeah. So Romani, put that in the chat and just tell us what your other QBs in this Dynasty Superflex are, because that will certainly determine the answer there.
I'm leaning yes, though.
I'm not
2
opposed
rookies. To it. Richardson's look good.
He's got Burrow and Stroud.
Oh.
Burrow and Stroud, and then you could have Richardson and Addison there. Sober Money, are you?
So if you do this right, you don't have to worry about quarterback for the next 10 years. right?
Easily.
Like that.
Yeah.
That's essentially what we're saying, right? So if you do the deal in a position that is so hard, especially in super flex leagues, you don't have to worry about quarterback for 10 years because of who you have and what their potential ceilings are, especially with Richardson and Stroud, right, being in their first season. But I think I do this. Like St. Brown has not played. I love Amon-Ra St. Brown. I really do. I think he is a tremendous player to watch. If he misses this game, this just continues the streak. If he is yet to play an entire season without getting injured and banged up, Addison, we like in a pass-happy Vikings offense that as long as he's attached with Justin Jefferson, I think they're going to continue to throw the ball. You're not going to change the dynamic of that offense with those two high-profile wide receivers and do it to run the ball with Alexander Madison.
And he has Waddle, Higgins, JSN, Brees Hall. Yeah, I think I'm doing it.
Do it. I think you do it. It sets you a quarterback, right? And then while other teams are jockeying for position at quarterback and trading their futures away to try and get the potential one guy, you have film on two rookie quarterbacks, both who have played well to this point. Time will tell. But then you can worry about skill position players, which are generally easier to hit on. I think I do this.
Yeah, and especially because it looks like it's a young roster too, so you can solidify away the quarterback room, like Kevin said, for the next 10 years, being a dynasty, and you can then start picking off what you need around the rest of the roster to do it, and you can be sitting there on draft day drafting best player available instead of having to go for I have to have this running back, or I have to have a wide receiver, or I have to have whatever that looks like. So that way you can just take best player available, and that's ultimately where you build those dynasty rosters that are really good and able to compete for championships year in, year out.
Essentially means he'd have picks 2, 3, 5, and 6 in this last year's rookie draft.
Yeah. Yeah, and so it's one of those that it sounds like you kind of went through a little bit of a rebuild there, but I would say very well done. So
I like it. I like what it means for the future. So
absolutely.
I don't have a problem doing it.
Alrighty. I got to find our spot here. Alrighty. So we got a lot of comments in here, and I'm just kind of going through with the ones I saw pop through first, and I will get through them all. Just be patient with us. Tingley, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but Heyo helps with starting to Kamara, Pacheco, Achane, full PPR. I'm going Achane and Kamara. That's how I'm going to roll on this one.
I'm going Achane and Pacheco.
Okay. Reason for Pacheco over Kamara?
Easier matchup, higher point total in the game.
Fair enough. I'm with the full PPR side of that. That's where it brought me to Kamara, was the fact that, we talked about that one quite a bit, and I do think that you were right when you were talking about that game, that we do see Kamara get a lot of targets and some good reception work on that. So I think he can PPR his way just past Pacheco this week, but those points are going to come ugly versus Pacheco. I think we'll have a more traditionally good game. So kind of where I'm at. This was back to the Barkley Hall, Kamara, JT question on starting those. They couldn't pull off any moves. They were trying to move Barkley and trade him away to get an elite wide receiver. The wide receiver room that they've got is a lot of depth, but enlisting an elite piece. It's got Devontae, Amari, Godwin, Jacoby Myers, McLaurin, and Palmer. I don't know that you're
still your elite piece, right? Right. I think he's still your elite piece. With Mike Evans up in the air, Godwin could emerge as a clear-cut second wide receiver on your team, and then you're playing matchups between Amari Cooper, Jacoby Myers, Terry McLaurin.
Right.
Josh Palmer's just a guy, right? Josh Palmer's the jag. The rest of these guys, you got some good pieces here. I think you're all right.
Yeah. And I guess too, that's one of those that, like, I get that Saquon Barkley has a lot of name power behind him, but he's far more of a buy low candidate than a sell high kind of candidate. And if you're looking for an elite piece, and we're saying that and you're thinking that Devontae Adams is outside of the elite wide receiver range, who Devontae Adams, we do all of our scoring, all of our stuff based off of a half point PPR, because it kind of sits in the middle of full point and sits and standard. Devontae Adams is wide receiver 7 on the week. So the elite wide receivers, based on scoring, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, Keenan Allen, Stephon Diggs, Puka Nacua. Like, that's really kind of the only guys outside of DJ Moore's blow up game last night that are above him. So when you're looking at that, like, I wouldn't be trading a Justin Jefferson for a Saquon Barkley, or a Tyreek Hill for a Saquon, or a Keenan Allen, or a Stephon Diggs for that. You might be able to do, I'd probably trade Puka Nacua for Saquon at that point, but right, like, that's just because the Cooper Kupp coming back and there's some question marks there. Whereas Saquon healthy, we know what that role is. So that's the reason you're not finding an elite wide receiver out there.
Give it
and
2 weeks.
Right. Give it a couple of weeks. And with your running back room the way it is, and with guys starting to really have to go through the gauntlet of bye weeks here, and they're going to start really, really feeling like they need running back help there, you'll be able to, the trade value on Saquon will inevitably rise, especially when he has a couple of good games and he's healthy. Right now it's tough to trade off a running back 27 for a wide receiver top 5. Like, it's just, you're not going to do it. So, all right. Priceless Pigeon over on Twitch just traded Herbert and Mostert for Devontae Adams. Good trade.
I don't hate it. You got the best player in the deal.
I would disagree. It was Justin Herbert and Mostert for Devontae Adams. I
thought it was Khalil Herbert.
Yeah,
Justin
I thought
Herbert.
So too, and that was.
Who's the quarterback you have left on your roster? The question I have for you.
Yeah. And if it was a single QB league, I can be more understanding of that. But if it's a super flex and you just traded away a top, it's a super flex and you just traded away a top 5 quarterback, top 2 quarterback, and who was the number 1 quarterback coming into last night's game, Justin Fields has now edged him out on total points. But like, that's a tough move to make there. So, Priceless Pigeon, if you can hit us up with who your other quarterback is, we could hit that one up. Ty asking, do we play DFS like DraftKings? We play a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
Any other?
It's not my go-to, just because I have so many dynasty and redraft leagues, right? I'm in too much of that arena to be able to sink more time into the DFS arena. I dabble at best, I think is the word I'd use for it, Ty, but I am familiar with it.
Yeah, I probably play more single game slates. Like the Thursday night games, I usually throw a couple of DFS lineups out there. The Monday night games, I usually do on that one, just to kind of make those ones a little more interesting for me. But that's kind of where I do. I don't do many of the Sunday slates. Rusty Violet, 12-person PPR. Do I trade Ramondre Stevens and Amon-Ra St. Brown for Rachaad White and Jalen Waddle?
No. I don't know that there's enough separate. There is separation between White and Stevenson, but
I like the upside more on St. Brown than I do Waddle. Like, I get we'll see Waddle pop and we'll see.
But he's still number 2, right? Like,
right.
We saw St. Brown finish above him last year. He's currently outpacing him this year. White and Stevenson, you get a slight upgrade, but I don't know. I don't think I do this one.
Yeah, I mean, you're just kind of moving some names around at that point, in my opinion. Like, it's not really going to be one of those that you're going to get anything blockbuster out of this thing, and especially in a PPR. Amon-Ra St. Brown's going to be typically going to outpace Waddle in that one. Same thing too. Ramondre Stevenson, I think will actually probably outpace Rachaad White when it comes to targets on that one as well. Half point
Puka.
PPR, Puka or Ayuk. Any other thoughts?
It's Puka.
Okay. Traded away Amari in London for ETN. Do you think it was an overpay?
No, I don't think that was an overpay. London was a potential buy low candidate. We talked about that, but it was all centered around the idea that they're talking about Taylor Heineke potentially usurping Desmond Ridder, right? If the passing game doesn't get better in Atlanta. But I don't hate this. You know, everybody's always looking for a running back, and I think that's fair value.
Fair enough. This is back to that trade question on the Saquon and trying
You'll
to
be
do
good.
that.
Injuries caused it, right?
Mm-hmm.
JT's on the pup list. Cam off.
Right.
Barkley, like you have enough studs. You'll be okay.
Right, and that's one of those things too. Like we were just saying, in a couple of weeks, right? Like the ship will get right for you on this one, and there's a good chance that in a couple of weeks you're sitting there 3-3, 3-4, even, you know, those types of things, and you're put yourself in a position, and you're now at more of a PowerPoint or a power play where you can pick which running back you want to trade off for the upside at some of the other positions to kind of, you know, fully kind of fill out your roster construction to make a playoff push there. But right now at 1-3, I'm not concerned on that one.
The number next to your ranking in the playoffs doesn't matter.
No,
it doesn't matter whether you're 1, 4, 6, 8, depending on how many teams get in. It's just getting in. So injuries nipped you here to the first quarter of the season. Guys are coming back here the second quarter. You're able to start jockeying around. So stay true to the course, buddy. I think you'll be all right.
Yeah, the bye weeks here are going to really separate some teams out there, and you're going to see a lot of teams start getting a little bit on the desperate side for some of those running backs that you've got. So you'll be all right. Priceless Pigeon saying this was his other quarterback in that league. It says single QB. He got Mahomes and he got Herbert. Says he doesn't know how he got both of them, and it's a full PPR. Okay, all's forgiven on that trading away that one.
Yeah, I don't mind it. I think I probably would have pushed for Herbert for Adams, maybe straight up, but I don't hate the deal. Like with having Mahomes there, you'll be okay.
Right.
His best is yet to come too. He said so himself. He realized he hasn't played well. He's getting ready to come up against a really soft slate of pass defenses. The Broncos twice, the Vikings this week. Here over the next 4 weeks, we're going to see Mahomes kind of right the ship and turn it back around. And over this next quarter of the season, if you will, you're going to be more than happy to just ride with Pat and call it.
Right. And Priceless Pigeon Ballard over on YouTube saying that they like the trade there as well for you now that they see that Mahomes is your other quarterback.
Yeah, so, I like that too.
All righty. Tingley was saying that going back to the start 2 question, we had the split on this one where Pacheco and Kamara, would they be a better option for the flex over Zay Flowers or Tank Dell? As much as I like Tank Dell, and I like Tank Dell quite a bit, I'm not going to roll him over Kamara or Pacheco on that one. In a full PPR type of deal, the Flowers is interesting, but
I like Flowers for the ceiling. I think Flowers gives you your easiest path to more than 12 points.
Mm-hmm.
Pacheco's going to have to fall in the end zone to do it. Kamara's going to have to catch at least 7 balls to be able to do that, which is possible. But I do think that if you're starting in a flex position, your goal is 12 points out of that spot. And Flowers is your clearest path to and above 12 points out of the 4 guys we have listed here on the screen.
Yeah. I mean, it's getting Lamar Jackson to throw touchdown passes has been a difficult proposition this year in Baltimore.
Not for Mark Andrews.
Well, that's true. Outside of Mark Andrews, I'm sorry. My apologies to everybody but anyway, the Zay Flowers deal. Yeah, I think that this is one of those that you see Zay Flowers have a stat line something like 5 for 55, 5 for 60 on this one. And I think he does that pretty easily with it. If he falls in the end zone, he'll easily have a bigger ceiling than Kamara or Pacheco, who both of which I think need to find the end zone in order to do that. And if we're going straight up on that one, I think that Flowers will outproduce Kamara in yards here as well. Kamara just might get all those darn checkdowns that, PPR point pop him up. But yeah, I think you're right. I think Flowers is the ceiling play. Ballard, would you start Tank Dell or Josh Reynolds this week since Amon-Ra St. Brown is out? I'm going to go with Dell. I realize the potential for Josh Reynolds. I also think that this is one of those that we're going to see a super heavy dose of David Montgomery. We're going to see the Lions just run this ball left, right, center, and crazy. Jameson Williams coming back there as well kind of muddies the water in the wide receiver room. So I actually think that we see a much bigger dose of Sam Laporta, and I think we see a much bigger dose of David Montgomery than we have the last couple of weeks in that Lions game. But I certainly do get the appeal on rolling out Josh Reynolds.
I get the appeal, right? I'm trying to see the path to points, right? Like 5 for 60. Is that too much? It might be. It might be with how we see this game script going. Like we could see 4 for 42, and it wouldn't surprise me. I think I'm going to lean Dell, knowing that he's going to play in the slot and be off coverage a little bit and have a little bit more space to work with. Yeah, I think I'm going to lean Tank Dell here.
I'm going to just take a quick peek at something here real quick. Yeah, I know most of your deals, you got Josh Reynolds ranked in the 40s, even with that news. Tank Dell, he's ranked kind of back end wide receiver 2 on this one here. So,
yeah. And
keep in mind, Josh Reynolds is also questionable this week with a groin injury. No injury designation on Tank Dell. So I'm going to, that solidifies it even more for me.
Yep, I agree. Dell, he's your guy.
All right. RS German on the YouTube is saying, good evening, gentlemen. Pick 2 between Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, Darren Waller, or Tank Dell.
Flowers is your floor. Addison's your ceiling because of how I see that game script going between the Vikings and Darren Waller should be more involved than what he is, but until the Giants offensive line decides that they can keep Daniel Jones upright for longer than 1.6 seconds, having the ability to bench Darren Waller, I think you just have to at this point and kind of make him prove it. So if you need points, I'm going with the game total and Flowers and Addison. If you're looking for safer floors, then I'm going Dell and Flowers.
Yeah, I'm playing Zay Flowers is the smash start for me on all of those guys. So I would absolutely roll Zay Flowers. And then I agree with everything you said there. I probably lean Tank Dell over Addison. But if you need the ceiling play because you're playing from behind a little bit, you're projected to lose some of those things, then yes, Addison absolutely comes into play.
If you went up against DJ Moore or
if you went up against Logan
Justin
Thomas,
Fields,
even,
like you're probably chasing a little bit. Addison's probably your higher ceiling.
All righty. Hudson over on YouTube, 10 team PPR got Fields, Lawrence, Barkley, Montgomery, Taylor, Madison, Puka, CD, Ridley, London, tight end, Kelsey, Ferguson, 3 and 1, sit tight or try and get Devonta Smith or Amon-Ra. Depends on what you got to give up, right? Like I can understand wanting to go out and get Devonta Smith or Amon-Ra St. Brown with the fact that London has been not very good to start the season. Ridley, outside of 3/4 of this season, has not been very good. Puka, the Cooper Kupp news coming back, and CD has been a little bit disappointing there. So I understand all of that, but it depends on who you got to give up. I'm not giving up Barkley or Montgomery. I'm maybe a Madison type of move, but again, like with the running back depth that's out there, I don't know that I want to. It depends on what I got to give up. If I can roll a Madison and a London to go get one of those guys, sure.
I do Madison and Ridley to get St. Brown.
Okay, I like that.
It's kind of the highest I'd go. I think Puka and CD and what we think will be an improvement out of Calvin Ridley will get you there. Travis Kelce and your tight end spot will clear a lot of woes. And I say deficiencies, but where you might be a little bit lacking, and we got to see where Taylor comes back at. So that's where I would lean. Madison and Ridley for St. Brown would probably be your pie in the sky ask, if you will. And other than that, I'm good with not making a move. I'm good with sitting tight. Fields is starting to emerge. You have Kelce there, so you have two really high-end players and being able to run with that.
I also Waddle was in that mix. I think I'd rather have Amon-Ra over Waddle. So I'm going to co-sign on to what you said there. Any other thoughts on that one?
No. Rest of the season, I like Amon over Waddle. Just consistency. Yes, Amon-Ra might miss another game, but Jalen Waddle, with how this Miami offense just kind of flows to the open guy, we've seen it before this season already, where Waddle gets 3 catches for 45 yards and 7 points out of your wide receiver 2 just ain't going to cut it.
Right. All righty, guys. So we're going to get through the questions that are in the chat right now, and then we're going to call it a night here. So Josh, you've got the last question that I've got here. Princess Pigeon, Jameson Williams or Priceless Pigeon. I'm sorry about that. Jameson Williams or Tutu Atwell this week.
Atwell probably has the floor.
Yeah.
In a high-scoring, what we perceive as a high-scoring matchup against the Eagles. Jameson Williams is the upside, especially with no St. Brown. So if you're chasing points and you need a big game, you're probably much more likely to have it come from Jameson Williams than Tutu Atwell.
Right. Not going to surprise me if we look up and we see Tutu Atwell have a stat line somewhere
3 for 35.
Yeah, I was going to say 3 for 30, 4 for 40, something like that type of deal. Whereas Jameson Williams could have 1 for 40 and a touchdown. Like, that's just kind of how that comes to play. He could also have 0 receptions on that one too. Like, it is very tough to say how they're going to use him. So I think you're absolutely right. 2-2 for the floor and Jameson for the ceiling play. Terry traded away James Cook for Brian Robinson and added Latavius Murray due to his increased reps. Thoughts? I personally would have stayed with the James Cook side of things.
I love James Cook this year, so I'm not the biggest fan, but yeah, you got Lat Murray there. Yes, he's kind of clearly outpaced Harris as the number 2 back there, and does see some of the goal line carries. So Cook, who also added your PPR value, is what you traded away. Now you have more ground and pound guys. So I think you can get there. But I personally like Cook more.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Terry asking McLaughlin or Madison full PPR this week?
Madison.
Yeah, I have to agree. All right, Josh, rate the 20-person PPR team. Man. That's a marathon draft that you got to get through. Russ, JT, Aaron Jones, Tyreek Hill, Christian Kirk, Cole Kmet, Atwell, also have Jameson on the bench.
You did a lot of trading to get that in a 20-man league.
Yes, you did.
But I think that works, right? JT's coming back. Aaron Jones feeling healthy after, last week kind of being his first week back. You got Tyreek, which is obviously a difference maker. Kmet had a big week.
Ballard was just commenting on that. That was a crazy.
Yeah, it is. It's you should be pretty well heads and tails against the vast majority of your competition in a 20-man league with that starting lineup. So I like it. I like the ceiling plays. And Russ continues to get it done. It's not always pretty. Quite frankly, it's not often pretty with how he's getting it done, but Russ has been effective for fantasy. Maybe not hyper efficient, but effective.
All righty. I like it. Terry had his one last comment in here, and then we'll say I traded away JT, Amari Cooper, and B-Rob for Henry and Chase. The new lineup is Stafford, Chase, Keenan Allen / Puka, CMC, Pollard, Henry, Goddard. The league is a frenzy after this deer, fair or foul. I simply accepted the offer.
Hey, if it's offered to you.
Right.
I mean, sometimes we get gifts, and JT and Cooper for B-Rob.
On the surface, I'm not necessarily but seeing how it actually fits into your lineup there, I'm a big fan of that move. Because Henry's now your third running back behind CMC and Pollard.
Yeah.
You have two wide receiver ones, and Puka's performing out of his mind in wide receiver one territory as well.
Yeah. You bought Chase low. Right. This kind of the deal that we were talking about on the Tuesday night show, right? Like you essentially got Chase low. The gamble's on Henry, right? Do you get the effective Henry from last week or the not nearly as effective Henry who's getting out snapped by Tajee Spears from 2 weeks ago, right? As he continues to get a little bit older, and that offensive line in Tennessee is not anything to be excited about. So no, I don't hate it. All you gotta do is accept it, right? JT's a wild card, but if he turns out JT could outproduce Derrick Henry for the rest of the year. And Brian Robinson is clearly the guy in Washington for God knows whatever reason. Like he has one skill set and it's just to run right into the man's ass in front of him. And that's just kind of what he does. But it's what Ron Rivera wants. They refuse to give Antonio Gibson any sort of play in Washington, even when they're down by 21 points at halftime. Like you just don't see Gibson get the ball. So right, and it's a lot closer than what your league makes or making out for, right? Like you can look at it both ways, and yeah, you could think, oh, it's just name power, maybe, but with how everyone's playing, you bought Chase low, you're taking a gamble on Henry. Cooper's been just fine. Brian Robinson's been good until he played the Bears and then looked like poo because the Commanders threw the ball 55 consecutive plays. 55 consecutive plays, which completely took him out. So I don't hate it. Good for you.
Well, as much as everybody's super high on Brian Robinson, I honestly don't understand it, right? For all the points that you just made about how they're using him, all of this, for fantasy purposes, the guy has scored 66 points on the season. 28 of those points came in week 2 against the Broncos. Like outside of that, he hasn't been good for this. So that's an ultimate kind of sell high type of move on him, because I don't know that we're going to see him perform well again, right? He's had one, outside of that week 2 performance, the next best performances have been like running back 15, running back 16 on the week. And then, some performances like this, especially after last night, you have one really good performance, 2 usable performances for where you drafted him at, and 2 performances that you wish you had started another running back in there. Like that's ultimately where he's going to come to play and all of that. And I don't know that changes much going forward. So I like the deal for you, Cherry. Josh was saying that he traded Amon-Ra, Breece Hall, Madison, Parker and Chark for Hill, Jones, Christian Kirk, and Everett. Going back to that 20-person deal. So.
Right on.
All right. Yeah. And Ballard saying that he likes the trade for Josh. Ty saying that we were right on B-Rob. On the B-Rob take, not going to lie. All right. Well, guys, that's going to do it for us. And we very much appreciate everybody tuning in, the comments, all of that good stuff, and the chat. Always loved chopping it up with everybody out there in the chat. We'll be back on Tuesday night, 11 p.m. Eastern. And then we'll be back again next Friday, 11 p.m. Eastern as well. But that's going to do it for us. Any last thoughts out there?
No, feel free to hit us up, shoot your thoughts, questions over. We'll continue to, answer as quickly and best we can, just kind of offline, if you will. But good luck, everyone. Keep hammering away, and we'll catch you during week 6.
Okay. I like it. All right, Rusty, you got that one in. We're going to hit it up, and then I'm signing off, and we're ending this guy. But, okay, Rusty's back. 12-man PPR. They countered on that deal. Jalen Waddle, Breece Hall from Ramondre Stevenson, Amon-Ra St. Brown.
You get Jalen Waddle and Breece Hall? Am I reading that right?
I think so. And if that's the case, I'm smashing yes and moving on.
Yes. Yeah. Waddle and Hall is greater than Ramondre and St. Brown. Like at that point, I do the deal.
Yep. Agreed. So, Rusty, if you're getting to take the Jalen Waddle and Breece Hall side of that thing, smash accept. Take Jalen Waddle, Breece Hall, trade away Ramondre Stevenson and Amon-Ra. What are we saying no about?
No, it's the other side. Then no, we're not doing it.
Yeah, if you've got to trade away Jalen Waddle and Breece Hall for Ramondre and Amon-Ra, I wouldn't do that one.
No.
So
it's either yes, you want the Waddle and Hall side. That's kind of the end of the story.
Yes. All right. So that is going to do it for us. He's Kevin. I'm Derek. Have a good one. Be safe. Toodaloo.